So it's right there, so we can like, you can like, I know it, I mean, I know it back. You know it, but at the same time, you get forced. Sometimes it's weird.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. It is just past 5:31, and we're going to call this meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee to order. All right, that is item 2.01. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on time. We will move on to item 2.01, the roll call.
Polly Boardman.
Present.
Shannon Coley, present. Melissa Cook-Sanford.
Present.
Kristen DeHaan.
Present.
Cami Elquist-Leray.
Present.
Darren Fleck.
Present.
Ryan Henderson.
Present.
Eddie Hirschman. Mia Mansfield.
Here.
Adriana Publico.
Here.
Tyler Rogers.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. So we've got a good amount to cover this evening. For folks that are joining us, I just want to orient us a little bit to the flow for this evening. There are packets in the back of the room if you want to follow along, both with the agenda as well as the materials that will be reviewed this evening. We are here in the community to engage in the communities that we are discussing, which is why we come out from the district headquarters to meet our communities where they are. And so that's why it's important for us to hear public comment. And so tonight we'll be taking public comment on two specific items, including the closing items. But we take public comment for items that are of action. So we will take public comment related to the approval of the meeting minutes 2.01, as well as item 2.05, which is, I suspect, the primary item that folks are here to discuss and want to provide public comment about. Again, this is not an item that we're planning to take action on tonight, but we know that the community is here, and so we want to take public comment. So if you are here to provide us feedback as the community on that specific item, please submit a green card to Shannon over there. Put your name and the agenda item on it, and then when we get to that, we'll sort of open up a forum for public comment at that time. All right, so that brings us to item 2.01, approval of the minutes of the January 16th, 2025 meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee. Does anyone have a motion or questions on the meeting minutes? Are there any public comments for item 2.01?
No, there is not.
Very good. Can I get a motion?
I, Adriana Publico, move that the Zoning Advisory Committee approves the minutes of January 16th, 2025.
Thank you. A second.
Polly Boardman, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from January 16th, 2025. We will vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Meeting minutes are passed. Very good, thank you. That brings us to item 2.02, presentation and discussion of the Washoe County School District School of Choice program. And I'll hand it over to our district staff joining us tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer, and I will be your MC tonight for our guest speakers and helping to answer questions as needed. So with me, I have Desiree Mandeville, and she is the Student Enrollment and the Director of Student Enrollment and Records. A little bit about Des. We call her Des because we've known her for so long. Sorry. She was the principal at North Valleys High School, also the principal at Swope Middle School, an AP at North Valleys High School, and taught English 9 through 12 before that. So she's got a lot of history and education, and she's here, and she's the expert on School of Choice program for Washoe County.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So the School of Choice program is we developed to open up the variance process in a more equitable way for all families. So this process was formerly known as variance. It was paper and pen and done by parents filling out the paperwork, going to each school they were interested in. So it was fairly cumbersome on the parent side. So now we've switched to an electronic system. And we have 2 windows each year, a fall window for available schools that are open, and then a spring window. And that next window is approaching, and we thought it would be relevant to the work being done here. One key point about School of Choice is the families also need to make sure that they've done online registration. That is one key point. We want to make sure that families know they've done that part in order for placements to be final. So the next window opens March 3rd at 8 a.m. And then closes open for 2 weeks. Closes on March 14th at 5 p.m. So normal business hours. The link can be found at the School of Choice webpage on the district page. So if families just search in the little magnifying glass School of Choice, it'll pop right up. And again, at 8 a.m. on the 3rd, it'll be available for them. If needed, a lottery takes place. For example, if you have a particular school and they only have, let's say, 25 seats and you had 30 applications, then a lottery would take place for that school to place all 25 students. At the elementary level, it becomes a little more nuanced in that maybe there's 10 applications for first grade, but only 5 slots. Again, a lottery would just happen at the first grade level for elementary. Middle and high, though, it's overall. Okay? We do give priority to siblings living in the same household, and so that application, let's say there's an 8th grader at that site already, and an incoming 6th grader would like to come, again, out of zone. They would apply, and they would get a preference or an additional point, so to speak, on their application to weight that application higher, because we always want to try and keep families together. Notification of families from this spring window will occur mid-April, and that's in the manner that they applied. They can apply through their phone number. It's an application called Avella. They apply through that or through their email address, and that's how communication takes place back and forth, whether text or email. Again, families do need to complete online registration for final process, and the high school CTE programs are outside of this process. They have their own specialized application process, which is separate from School of Choice. So can an application be denied for the School of Choice process? Yes, it can. We have to make sure that we leave enough room for the zoned students. They have first rights to all those seats at that school, and that's what we want to fill first. And then we look at the variant students or the School of Choice application students. So that is a possibility of why a school either might be closed, meaning they don't have any more available seats, or they're approaching that 100%, and we have to leave any remaining room for the zoned students. So we fill to 90% of capacity And then at that point, we close it off to school of choice applications, and the school becomes closed. So right now, you can see that there are, if you go to the school district website and go to the school of choice page, you can see the updated list of closed schools. And the complete list will be updated by end of day tomorrow. We're still in the process of verifying a couple schools. Ones that might pertain here would be Swope is closed. But there are other schools near here, middle schools, that would be open. So just a point of information. Let's see. Okay. Where can they find more information? So School of Choice, the website is right there for a direct link for families. It is updated. There's English and Spanish available. The application will also be in English and Spanish. Parents get to pick when they click on the application, and it switches into their preferred language. And then also on that website is a list of frequently asked questions, probably more than they ever wanted to know, but they can definitely look at those as well. And then, of course, they can call our office. Office staff is available during school business hours to answer questions, and there's an email address as well. So whenever it's convenient for the family, they can shoot that email to us, and then we'll respond as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thanks for the overview. Are there questions from the committee on school of choice?
Yeah, Darren Fleck for the record. Yeah, I just had a question. Like, I know at our site, we were a little concerned because we went through rezoning, and then School of Choice was open. And as I understand it, School of Choice is, you're only opened or closed in the fall. Is that correct?
No, schools are still open. So again, we only close the school once it
No.
reaches that 90% of capacity. I'm sorry.
So at the beginning of the year, if a school is over 90%, and then you open transfers and they fall below 90%, you don't reopen them, correct?
So yes, if the school was closed in the fall, then they are still closed for the spring as well. Because they were already at that 90% capacity. Granted, there has been some shifting that was looked at, but they're still at that 90% capacity.
So my question is, we go through rezoning. We know some of the newer schools, even though they can be filled and have mobile classrooms, have never reached 90%. We open them up to school of choice. And I'm just talking through things I'm hoping the district is thinking about. We open them up to school of choice, and then other schools become affected because once that school of choice reopens, they return to that school, and now we have a crash in population at another school. And we go through a whiplash effect, and I'm speaking specifically of Sky Ranch, Mendive, where you hire 3 teachers, fire 3 teachers, because that gets opened up, where we fall below, and then we're not allowed to take variances, so therefore stuff leaves. And I'm just hoping that the district takes that into consideration in the future, because it does create, we thought we resolved the problem by opening up room, and then that room is taken back up. And we have this, particularly at Mendive right now, especially with the families, right? Which is fine, right? But it does create a bubble. And you get a bubble of families that are tied in who have previously received variances through school of choice. And so even when we spend almost a year going through rezoning, we've recreated a problem now, because all those kids that have been rezoned to Sky Ranch or get a variance to Sky Ranch now, their families are pretty much locked in to keep them going there, even though we still have a growing population in that neighborhood and a school that already has a portable classroom added to it. And so I just hope you guys take that into consideration in looking at this in the future, especially when we spend time trying to fix something to have it undone.
Absolutely. And I will say that last year was the first year for this electronic district-wide school of choice process. Before that, it was school by school. And I will say that we definitely learned quite a bit and are always looking to improve the process.
Any other questions?
Melissa Cook for the record. I'm just wondering, when a family gets notification that they've been accepted into a school of choice, is there a deadline for when they have to accept that school of choice so then we can do future planning for staffing and student purposes?
Yes, so for example, this last fall window, families were notified by the end of November. And we encouraged them to do online registration, which had also just opened at that time, for them to complete the process. We gave them really until the last week of January to complete that process, nudging families along the way who had maybe needed a reminder, like, you haven't done it yet, you haven't done it yet. And then as of February 3rd, any remaining ones that hadn't done online registration, those applications were canceled. It was a very small number. And then those spots will go back to the schools to open up for the second window.
Shannon Coley. I'm looking at the capacities. Does that include the portables?
So Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. The capacities are based off of the base capacity and don't include the portables.
Okay.
Any other foundational questions?
You meant, Adriana Publico for the record, you mentioned that SWOPE is closed. Are there any of the other secondary schools we'll be discussing tonight that are on the closed list, namely HERS, DePauli, Vaughn, Galena, Damani, Worcester, and Reno?
So Desiree Mandeville for the record. Yes, so SWOPE is closed. I have to go by area. Mendive closed and Mount Rose is closed at the middle school level. At the high school level, currently we have Hug, North Valleys, and McQueen that are closed. Like I said, we are finalizing numbers tomorrow to see if there's any additional schools that need to be closed, and they'll be on the website and updated by the end of day tomorrow. Thank you.
Any more questions? Desi, thanks for joining. I think it's really important for the community to hear about this program as we factor sort of impacts on schools, because it's a great option. Thank you. That brings us to item 2.03, presentation and discussion on the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association, NIAA, eligibility implications for students impacted by rezoning. This is a topic for presentation and discussion only.
Good evening. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. And today I have Lindsay Kendrick with me. Lindsay and I've known Lindsay since my kids were at Billinghurst. She is the Director of Student Behavior and Supports. She was an AP at Sparks Middle School, an AP at Billinghurst Middle School, and the Dean at Billinghurst Middle School. And then prior to that, taught math for 11 years at Billinghurst. So she's a rock star.
I don't know about that. Lindsay Kendrick, Director of Student Behavior and Supports for the record. I'm here to talk about athletic participation and how it's affected by zoning. I'm basically going to just cover two scenarios. One around high school students that are already enrolled in high school and might be affected by rezoning, and then incoming high school students, so 8th graders that will be going into a zoning situation. It's pretty straightforward as far as the high school goes. If you're already enrolled in a high school and you get rezoned, you have the choice of staying at your school and doing the continuous variance form and that whole process, but you'll still be eligible for varsity level sports. You could also go to your newly zoned school and participate in varsity level sports. The caveat here is if you change your mind. For instance, if you want to stay at your current high school and you choose to do that and you go through the process, you can't then partway through this school year say, wait, I want to go to my newly zoned school. If you do that, you will lose varsity level participation or eligibility. You'd have to go for sub-varsity level. You could still, play sports, but you wouldn't be eligible for that varsity. And that would be for 180 days, so a school year, you wouldn't be eligible. The other situation is an 8th grader going into high school. So if they want to follow their rezoning and go to their new school, they're eligible for varsity level as a freshman. If they choose to stay with their currently zoned school and go through that variance process, they will not be eligible as a new student at that high school for varsity level. It's not very common for freshmen to be varsity level, but it does happen, but they would only be eligible for sub-varsity. This is NIAA right now. That's what, the policies are at the moment. If that's gonna change, I don't know, but right now, that's how it stands. So it's pretty cut and dry, pretty simple process right now. Any questions?
Tyler Rogers, for the record, is it only apply to varsity sports?
Yes, varsity level. They can be sub-varsity level, that's no problem. They just can't go for that varsity level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are there any transportation services provided to for students to go back to the school of choice for athletics?
No.
If they are rezoning? Okay.
No,
Okay.
no.
Any other questions on this agenda item?
I do. Camila Ray for the record. So if they're a sophomore and they choose to stay at their school that they were previously zoned for, do they have to continually every year reapply to stay there through their graduation?
That's a variance thing, I'm not quite sure. Hey, it does.
Sorry, Desiree Mandeville for the record. So no, once they are accepted, they're there for the grade levels, the lifetime of that school. Those, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Shannon Coley, back to you. You said that it's the whole school, 4 years, whatever. Is that apply to elementary school too? Do you not do variances every year? Or what, school of choice, do you have to apply to school of choice every year in elementary school?
So no, they do not. So if let's say a student applies during their kindergarten year and they get accepted to school A, they would be there through 5th grade unless the family tries or wants to apply to a different school. So they have their spot. The times that it changes is they have to reapply for 6th grade and they have to reapply for 9th grade.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Fast and easy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That brings us to agenda item 2.04, presentation and discussion of the pre-K-8 study conducted by Canon Design as approved by the Board of Trustees. This is an item for presentation and discussion only. And we have a new guest.
We have a new guest. So this is Adam Searcy. He is our Chief Operating Officer. He told me I can only say nice things, so I will. But we did a lot of work with the pre-K-8 study that was approved at the board in February, and he's going to present Canon Design's recommendations and ultimately the board's approval for that.
Hey, thanks everybody. Good evening. Adam Searcy again for the record. This is gonna be really just an informational update. I know the last time that we were together in January, there was uncertainty around exactly what the future might hold for the current Pine Middle School. We couldn't answer that with clarity. This was January 20th. On January 28th, we presented this study as well as a secondary recommendation to the Board of Trustees. And spoiler alert, the recommendations were unanimously approved. So I'm going to burn through this really quickly and offer up an opportunity for any discussion, but this hopefully will provide clarity and a bit of a mandate towards the work that we're actually trying to do here with the rezoning committee. So a little bit of a background. Many of you are familiar with the facility modernization plan that was composed primarily throughout 2022 and 2023. It was approved in December 2023 with a recommendation to conduct a study as to whether or not to reimagine, reconstruct the Pine and Trainer middle school campuses into either K through 5 or pre-K through 5 elementary schools or pre-K through 8 facilities. So in 2024, really throughout 2024, we embarked on that study. And the purposes were not only to just evaluate the recommendations for those campuses, but to develop a toolkit that the school district might refer to in the future if circumstances change or apply to different school sites. So it was just on January 28th, 2025, when that final report was presented and summarized to the Board of Trustees. And that report recommended that for specifically the Pine and Trainer middle school campuses, that a pre-K through 5 or a traditional elementary school facility was recommended. Just a bit about the process. We conducted, I think this has value. I'm going to go very quickly through it, but this was a very robust and thorough process that involved a tremendous amount of subcommittees and public engagement. Every bit of that public engagement was grounded in consistent guiding principles, keeping their minds open to possibilities, not preconceived outcomes, identifying equitable student opportunities, really what's best for the students and what's best for those communities. Starting with data and looking at case studies and quantitative information from really a wide range of sources before we started working with the humans in our community and teasing through that data. You can see, again, a variety of different groups, not just a group of architects, a group of educators, but a variety of different groups of people who are engaged in throughout this process. That was then further layered on with operational analysis. We're talking about transportation impacts, staffing impacts, and really school district overhead impacts associated with these two different models, pros and cons. Ultimately, any good study is going to demonstrate both sides. And at the end of the day, this report rolls them up into 4 key findings. The first one is that the pre-K-8 model does absolutely have merit for future consideration. This slide talks about national trends. This is a complicated topic, but there is growth nationally, primarily in the charter school arena. But it's a growing trend, although very much in the minority, particularly in Nevada. We talked to a number of other peer school districts that are highlighted on this map. We had really insightful virtual meetings with successful operators of K-8 schools from peer districts across the nation. Lots of best practices, key takeaways that are kind of highlighted on the slide, including one from Long Beach who actually noted how much the critical mass of enrollment really was essential to the effective operation of a K-8, so much so that they opened a K-8, operated it, and then through declining enrollment, found that they needed to basically transition back to an elementary school. So it was just a key takeaway going in eyes wide open through our analysis. This slide talks about our best efforts to really quantify some of the performance metrics around transitions, right? So one of the conversations or key lines of argument in favor of K-8s is that it reduces that transition from an elementary school to a middle school environment, just keeping the kids in the same basic school environment from kindergarten through 8th grade. And arguably, there's data that demonstrates there's challenges associated with those transition years, so that eliminating that transition could have merit for future consideration. Finding 2 was that the K-8 operational model is feasible. It's not that, there's pros and cons to it, but from an enrollment standpoint, from an operations standpoint, it is a viable option. Having rerun the enrollment numbers and looked at those different variables, this is not a disqualifying option from an operations standpoint. Finding 3, kind of go in the opposite direction, thinking again with an emphasis on equity of opportunity, that if we're not willing to provide somehow a compromised offering of opportunities to students at a K-8 school rather than a traditional 6-8 school, that there are additional allocations, special programs, resources that that students have at a traditional K or a 6-8 school that we would need to provide to a K-8 campus. So unless the district is willing to make explicit changes in their offerings, it would require a more expensive staffing model to provide that same level of opportunity at a K-8 that middle school student receives at a 6-8 school today. So that was a pretty quantitative analysis with our business office and a number of other folks. And then last but certainly not least was the somewhat overwhelming position of the community that this K-8 model was generally not supported by the community members that it was intended to serve. And again, with those peer districts, hearing time and time again that that's arguably the most important variable behind the success of these models, we really need to highlight that and hear that. So having said all of that, presented the final recommendation, which absolutely was to proceed with a new elementary school to be constructed on the current Pine campus to serve the Smithridge, Dodson, and likely other neighboring communities upon its opening. This slide details how that recommendation is actually consistent with one of the two final options recommended in the FMP back in 2023. So really just trying to emphasize that connection to the original work that we did, this study, which reaffirms, hey, is it a K-8 or is it a K-5? The study recommends we do an elementary school pre-K-5. And then we talked a little bit about the opportunity that we have to not just build the same elementary school that we have been building, but thoughtfully master plan the design so that if circumstances change in the future for any reason, that it will be readily modified from a facility standpoint. And this is not to imply that the elementary school would look or feel meaningfully different than our current elementary schools. It will look and feel like a fully complete elementary school with the same pieces and parts that our newest elementary schools have. But behind the scenes, on paper, we're going to take the opportunity to master plan it so that hypothetically in 15 years, circumstances change and we want to revisit this toolkit that we've developed and expand this into a K-8 facility, that we didn't, not think this far ahead. So this was a timeline also that was presented. You can see, I'm going to take the opportunity to, hopefully everybody saw the construction outside. Unfortunately, we don't get to take a tour. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. It's awesome to be on campus at Vaughn Middle School. No small part of the reason of holding it here was just to get a taste of the energy that hopefully is happening on this school campus in this community. But you can see we're actively under construction, and we're going to look to open this new school in August of 2026, at which time the mandate really to the Zoning Advisory Committee is to vacate Pine Middle School so as to allow for the reconstruction of that campus into a new modern pre-K-5 facility. You can see that's anticipated to take 2 full school years. We can't get that done between summer 2026 and 2027. So it's going to be not until August 2028 that new elementary school might open. And then again, we'll be back here talking about who will populate that well in advance of that date, but that August 2028 timeframe is the timeframe in which we're looking to activate those changes. I won't bore you with the recap, but the secondary item I mentioned at the January 28th board meeting. So the first item was presentation of this study and action to accept the report, something like that. The secondary item was action of the board to temporarily close Pine Middle School effective the 2026-27 school year for the purposes of reconstruction. So they did formally take action to direct staff and basically provide clarity to the committee, to the community, that this is our intention. And I think that gets back to where we were the last time we met in January, where it was, well, gee whiz, what exactly is going to happen with Pine? Well, now we have direction from the board that Pine is scheduled to close in 26-27 school year. And there's a number of things that need to happen between now and then to prepare for that, including determining where the current students zoned for Pine Middle School will attend school in the 26-27 school year and beyond. So that's all I have for tonight. Happy to entertain anything about the study, but mostly this was to provide clarity on, the changes that are coming to that campus particularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Tyler Rogers for the record. That was definitely a big missing piece of the puzzle last time, so it's helpful to have clarity on the Pine destination, as well as thanks for the school board for getting us that. One question I have is, as we are thinking about this area, can you give us any further insight into the other elementary schools that could be impacted by closing Pine or creating a new elementary school there that we can think about will be on our future of having to rezone as we're thinking about this and having this discussion tonight?
Yeah, I don't have a map handy, but if you all are pretty studied at looking enrollment boundary zoning maps, Corbett is one of the next most proximate schools to the current Pine campus. And actually a portion of the Corbett zone extends onto the east side of 580 right there on right along Moana and Airway. So I think they'll be in play on a smaller scale. And then also Donner Springs, again, is also the next most proximate enrollment zone to that current Pine campus, including a number of residential units kind of just on the south side of the Meadowood Mall. Yes, it's on the opposite side of McCarran, but we're going to be looking at that and with our design team and looking at options. And then, you guys have done this enough times to know that there's lots of different pieces that we will talk about the pros and cons of and try to do what's best for that community and those schools. And we'll probably bring that before the committee sooner than later for consideration. But yeah, we tried to signal that honestly with the verbiage of the Smithridge, Dodson, and other neighboring school communities to be served by this new elementary school.
Other questions of the committee on this agenda item?
Ryan Anderson for the record. So when we go to try to rezone where everybody's going out for 26, 27, but then to fill it in 28, are we trying to do that simultaneously? Or is this going to be kind of two separate deals? Because I feel like a bunch are going to get rezoned twice within 18 months or less.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be two separate actions, if for no other reason than, the school openings will be 2 school years apart. Tonight, we're talking about rezoning middle school and high school students primarily. In elementary school enrollment boundaries are not on the agenda tonight. And then it will be in the future ahead of the new opening of the new elementary school where we talk exclusively about elementary school boundary adjustments.
I think the thing to keep in mind is just knowing that this is on the horizon, but can't make specific decisions now. Any other questions? Okay, looking good. Thank you, Adam. That brings us to agenda item 2.05, presentation and discussion regarding proposed enrollment zone adjustments for the 2026-2027 school year, potentially impacting the following schools: Donner Springs Elementary School, Smithridge Elementary School, Hidden Valley Elementary School, Edwin Dotson Elementary School, Huffaker Elementary School, Vaughn Middle School, Edward L. Pine Middle School, I think that's Marcy Hers Middle School, Kendall DePoli Middle School, Darrell C. Swope Middle School, Earl Wooster High School, Galena High School, Damani Ranch High School, and Reno High School. For presentation and discussion only. I know this is the item, a lot of folks are here, so just in terms of how the order of operations are run here, we're going to get a report from district staff. We'll have a little bit of dialogue between the community and them, and then we'll take public comment at that time once we've sort of had a little bit of dialogue, and then the committee will talk a little bit more. With that, I'll hand it back over to Tammy.
All right. Thank you so much. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. I'm not sure Brett needs any introduction. He is the man behind the curtain and the gentleman who provides all this data for us and this dense data that you guys get to look at and make decisions on. So I'll turn it over to Brett.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Zoning Advisory Committee. Nice to see you all. Thanks for your time tonight. So to get into a little meeting context, last meeting you requested some information on historic rezones, and our office went ahead and mapped those, which can be found in the attachment B of the agenda. There's 4 maps in there that essentially articulate at the opening of HERS Middle School in the 2020-21 school year. We took the opportunity to overhaul a lot of the enrollment boundaries for the urban core, specifically in the Vaughn and Worcester area. We hit Huffaker and everything in the southwest that was zoned to HERS. The southeast also impacted. The main point here is that we achieved a lot of coherence when it comes to the alignments between school zones from elementary, middle, and high school. The maps in attachment B kind of explain that. We can open those up at some point if you want during discussion. We're not going to get into it specifically in this presentation, but they are there and available to us for further discussion. A little furthermore, in the 23-24 school year, Hidden Valley, Double Diamond, Donner Springs, and Pulikitas received enrollment boundary changes, but no current existing residences were impacted by that. The changes at that time were intended for future residential development, which are going to be coming into play between now and next year. So again, just really the main point is that we're achieving cleanliness and coherence with our enrollment boundaries from elementary, middle, and high. The next point is on our distances analysis that you folks asked for. That's on the very last page of your packet. And that looks at drive times between one school to the next. I want to point out that, you know, if you don't mind flipping to it, again, it's the very last page of your packets. What this does, if you see the Smith Ridge column, it takes a look at Smith Ridge and its relationship to Vaughn and what a Google drive time looks like to Vaughn. And those have been colorized to represent the fastest routes, the middle routes, the slowest routes, and then ties. I want to point out that the Hidden Valley and Donner Springs, there's some mistakes with the coloring. The numbers are accurate. So in the case of Hidden Valley is closer to DePaul and Damani than it is Vaughn and Worcester. And that's the same for Donner Springs, closer to DePaul and Damani than it is to Vaughn and Worcester. We're going to clean this up and repost this agenda tomorrow, from what I understand. So if you want to check back tomorrow, it'll be cleaned up. Apologies for the mistake there. Next point on tonight's context has to do with transportation. For really any of the zoning options that we're looking at, we anticipate the Smith Ridge area students that wherever they're rezoned to will receive new buses. Anyone else that is in a bus zone attending their zone school will receive transportation. And then lastly, we wanted to point out that the deaf and hard of hearing programs that are placed at Hidden Valley, Vaughn, and Worcester are going to remain there, for the foreseeable future. So kind of starting the meeting really off with our option summary. And to date, we've looked at 7 different options. We've disqualified 4 of those for the reasons that you can see in red on this slide. And then the options that we consider qualifying options are in green. Some of the disqualifying options include, we modeled Smith Ridge going down to DePaul, which currently attends Damani, so it would have stayed there in that option. We didn't like that option because it depletes Vaughn, or it underutilizes Vaughn. We looked at Huffaker going to Swope, and the main disqualifier there was that it sets Swope at some uncomfortable levels of student enrollment. again, the disqualifying options are in attachment B, and if we want to bring those up at any point in discussion, we can do so. We are, during this presentation, going to take a look at option 1, 1B, and 2A. So as for the qualifying options, again, 1, 1B, and 2A, I'm trying to set this up so that these have a constant variable to essentially theme or give them a lineage for why they're option 1, 2, so on and so forth. So the constant variable for option 1 and its sub options is Hidden Valley goes to Vaughn and remains Wooster. And then for 2, Hidden Valley goes to DePauli and Damani. So as we progress through the presentation, I just kind of want to set you up with that. So as for option 1, we visited this option last meeting. We're looking at putting Dotson, Hidden Valley, and Smith Ridge into Vaughn, and Hidden Valley and Dotson will remain in Wooster. Smith Ridge will move from Damani Ranch to Wooster. Donner Springs will be moved to DePauli. It currently is zoned for Damani Ranch and will remain Damani Ranch. And then Huffacre in this option goes to Hers and Galena. This is current conditions and then an after option 1 map side by side. And before I move on to the enrollment projections, I will say that as it sits now, this option is probably the most delicate option when it comes to changes, as well as qualifies for agreeably filling Vaughn. And a look at our student enrollment projections with option 1. So progressing on to option 1B, this option, as said before, we're keeping Hidden Valley into Vaughn and Wooster as our constant, and the changing variable, we're looking at putting Huffacre into Vaughn and Wooster. So very similar to option 1 with exception to the Huffacre to Vaughn Wooster piece. Here's the before and after. And the student enrollment projections for that option. I'll point out that this option populates Vaughn to a higher degree than any other option currently. And moving on to option 2A, our last option in this presentation, we're looking at moving Hidden Valley to DePauli and Damani and Huffacre into Vaughn and Wooster. Everything else is sort of status quo from the previous. Here's the before and after. And the brush fire charts for this. I think an argument could be made that this is the most favorable situation for all schools. And this compared to 1B is that Vaughn has pretty good numbers and Damani Ranch isn't as quite as low as 1B. And with that, I'll open it up to questions and discussion.
Thanks. thanks, Brett, for the summary. And I think it's, yep, I think it's helpful to have, I think, a shorter list of options to zero in on, but we should talk through that. I'll open it up to the committee to start with some questions.
Shannon Coley. I'm looking at the Damani numbers in all of these, and I know they seem really low. Taos Community will be going to Damani. Will they be building a middle school? Will they be just an elementary?
Yeah, for right now, we just have an elementary slated in the Taos development. And all students, to the best of our ability, coming out of that development are accounted for within these projections coming out of Taos. We've had some pretty focused conversations with the developers there, and they've provided us as high intensity of numbers as they can, and we've derived what we can from that. So I don't know if I made the point that all of Taos is zoned for Damani.
Thank you.
Mia Mansfield for the record. Is Taos and Sunny Hills and Daybreak all the same thing?
Daybreak and Taos are the same. Sunny Hills is different.
But same area?
Similar area, yeah.
Adriana Publico for the record. In the past, we didn't zone Smithridge students to Worcester, even though it's the closest school, because even though it's in the walk zone, the walk is very dangerous to cross the freeway off-ramp and Plum Lane. We can't recommend that busing be provided. That's not our purview, but when it goes to the board, can that be part of the presentation? That since all of these options are zoning Smithridge to Worcester, like, there's no avoiding that dangerous crossing.
Tammy Zimmerman, for the record. Yes, we would make that known to the board that there is preference to have busing for them, and we would provide the information about the impacts for what busing would be to the budget and to the district.
Tyler Rogers for the record. There was some confusion at the last meeting about the current zoning of Huffaker. So I just want to set the record straight here. I'm reading the map seeing that currently Huffaker is zoned for both Swope and Reno High. Is that correct?
That would be the previous situation that changed as of the 2020-21 school year. And since then, Huffaker is exclusively zoned to Pine now and Reno High School.
There's no part of Huffaker that's going to Swope?
Not currently.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
Darren Fleck for the record. Just in your opinion, if you had to leave, looking at your numbers and talking to the developer, if you had to leave a middle school, high school combination open for possible undercount of what these numbers might represent, like we've had recently in a couple times, since you guys are basically just crystal balling so much of this, what high school combination, high school, middle school combination would you like to see have more breathing room?
That's a good question. You know, in a perfect world, I think you find a balance between it all. And that's, you know, in my seat, I think that's the optimal situation. It takes a lot of work and disruption to get there, but.
Do you have a high school, middle school pair you would like to say or not say?
Well, can you be a little more specific? Are we narrowing this down into?
Would you like to see more room left to Damani Hers, or excuse me, Damani DePoli? Or would you like to see more room in Hers Galena, Worcester-Vaughn? I mean, because I think some of us have our anecdotal just driving around town thinking in our head, but.
Sure. I mean, as the demographer, I'd like to see a perfect balance between it all. And that's the best answer I can give you.
And I'll share my 2 cents. Because I understand where you're coming from and I appreciate it. I would just say, if we're looking for an area that is targeted for growth with the most compact nature of the growth, I would say, in my opinion, it looks like the DePoli area needs more breathing room than, say, HERS and Galena. Now, we might hear opposite of that with some of the admin that we have in the House tonight who can share their opinions of that, which I'd like to hear, because we also have to take into consideration special programs, which can affect schools, especially the middle schools, greatly, the GT programs and such. So that's just where I'm leaning in looking at numbers and just looking at where dirt is and houses are going up, and especially apartments, would be me leaning towards keeping DePoli and DeMonte. I mean, not cleaning them out, but keeping them out of space that allows for more growth in the other space.
Kristen Dahan, for the record. I know that you said that basically utilization-wise, option 2A seems to be the best option, but again, I want to, just as you have listed in here, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program is going to go from Hidden Valley to Vaughn to Worcester, and it's going to stay that way. Those students have already made connections in elementary school with the hearing students, and they will now have to make new connections with a whole group of people, and that's a concern to me.
Tyler Rogers, for the record. One question I've heard from the community is understanding sort of the sizing of Vaughn. And I'm just curious to hear from staff sort of how that decision was made to plan a capacity for the new facility.
So for the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. So we've heard many times through your zoning conversations that middle schools do best with at least 1,000 students, just so they can have the opportunities of electives in that. When we actually look at designing a building, we've done this same type of model at O'Brien. It's difficult to just chop off a classroom here and there. We also have to think about the special programs of hard of hearing here and the IB that could happen, and students coming to those programs. So we want to leave a little bit of room, right, for growth, as well as sizing it appropriately for any options that we could have under, within these data that Brett provides. But we also, right, when we did the facility modernization plan, the Canon Design looked at all of our middle school students and determined how many middle schools you should have in that to fill them to that appropriate level. So that's where we start taking that information from the facility modernization plan, as well as our discussion with our administrators and where you can provide electives. I know we talked about it at Shaw. A lot of them can't provide Spanish or those kind of things that they need or want, and that's what entices students into school sometimes, are those electives.
And so the sweet spot we should be targeting is 1,000 students for Vaughn to enable that?
Well, it's about 80, we like to have a sweet spot in our schools of about 85%, utilization of that. So it leaves a little bit of room for that. We also, in our new schools, right, we feel sometimes we have the attraction factor, and so we have to plan on those kind of things as well.
Thank you.
We definitely don't want to be putting mobiles out at a brand new school. So we do just a little bit larger to kind of make sure we take care of that.
Shannon Coley, along that lines of electives and schools, I'm reading some of the emails, and they're talking about Worcester. If they're zoned for now DeMonte, they have a lot more electives there compared to Worcester. Is that correct?
I would have to go back and look at and ask for their master schedule to see what they have, because those teacher allocations are based off of populations, but it could be that's the case, but we could bring that answer back to you guys.
But do they have the facility? I mean, is there a facility modernization plan for Worcester that they're going to be now caught up when they're here they'll be here at Vaughn when it's done, but then Worcester will be, is that coming online?
So Worcester is in the facility modernization plan as an opening of approximately 2033 for their school, and it's listed under that as a reconstruction. So we're actually right now working on initial designs to master plan, can it fit on that site, entitlements with that. So it is a little ways out, but they would get a new school at Worcester.
Okay, but just talking about now and how it would affect the kids that could be going to Galena or Damani, being now going to Worcester, and you're saying you don't know if they have the facilities and the electives.
They do have all the facilities, right? Their normal size is for a typical high school capacity. I'd have to look back and see what his numbers to see what they're at for enrollment, and to then check with the principal to see what electives they are able to offer and compare them with Galena and Damani.
Okay, I'm just thinking about like the theater and so forth at Damani that they wouldn't have at Worcester, and correct?
Culinary. They have a theater at Worcester.
Okay.
They have a metal shop at Worcester, those kind of things. Damani Ranch also has a signature academy, which is their theater department, so it is a little bit specialized with their signature programs. So you have to balance all of those at each of the schools with their specialties.
That's what I was thinking, the signature program.
Correct.
Thank you.
We also have Debbie Smith opening soon with even more options for kiddos. Yes.
Cami LeRae for the record. I'm trying to reconcile the low numbers at Damani Ranch, especially as we get into the 10-year projections, and sort of picking up with what you were talking about, which is the amount of land, the amount of building. So could you just help me understand why the projections for Damani Ranch are so much lower at the 10-year mark than they are in the other high schools?
Yeah, anyway, on any options here, Damani is going to experience a loss of students. I think our closest option includes 2A, where you put Hidden Valley into DePaul and Damani. The issue there is that Smith Ridge class sizes are going to be leaving Damani to Worcester, and they're larger class sizes than what Hidden Valley is putting into Damani. So, when it comes to the future projections on Damani, it is what it is based off of current enrollments and birth rates and development. And that's as much as I can say for you. I don't know if that helps you. Okay.
I know we've got a fair amount of public comment, so I want to make sure. Yes, any more questions for staff?
Yeah, just one.
Cool.
Adriana Publico for the record. When we rezoned Sun Valley from Spanish Springs to New Hug at the opening of that school, we unknowingly put rival gangs together at that campus at the opening of the school, which caused a lot of turmoil in the opening of that school. And it seems like we're setting up for a similar situation at Vaughn and Worcester with any of these options. So I'm wondering what the district has learned from that experience that's going to make this be better.
So for the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. We did work through that situation at New Hug High School with bringing in the Sun Valley students into the New Hug High School through mitigations that the schools do. A lot of the administrators, they're very versed in student behaviors and mitigating those items. And as of now, what we have understood from that principal and the staff up there is that those instances have decreased out there based off of their interventions. But we could bring additional information to you guys about those interventions if that's something that the chair and the vice chair choose to do for the next meeting.
I think it's less important for us to have that information, more important for Vaughn and Worcester to have that information.
Melissa Cook for the record. I'd also like to kind of piggyback off that, as I've had some comments that it is concerning to several staff members for these schools, considering the known gang situations, that safety is a concern. The design of the building is also a concern, being that it's 3 stories. That's a lot of stories and a lot of space for administration to have to have eyeballs at all times, and especially then when we add the additional safety concerns of potentially rival gangs coming in. So again, might not affect our decision, but something that the district needs to think about moving forward for resources and training as we move forward into opening and rezoning schools.
Any other questions before we open up to public comment? Very good. Tammy, Brett, thank you. At this point, we will open it up for public comment. Do we have any comments on this item?
Kelly Roper.
Are we using this mic? Right there?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you come on up, just push the little button with a head with lines coming out of it, looks like.
Hello, thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Kelly Roper, for the record. I'm a parent that lives in the Huffaker Elementary School zone, and I did not attend last month's meeting because I looked at all of the meeting documents and there were rezoning options 1 and rezoning options 1A. Both options recommended Huffaker to be rezoned to hers and Galena. And I was so happy for my neighborhood because I was very involved in the rezoning back in 2020. I attended every single meeting and went over every document that was sent to us. So many parents from Huffaker fought for our school to go to Marcy, hers, and Galena. We were told that no matter how strong a case we presented for our school, being naturally aligned to hers and Galena, they were unwilling to risk overcrowding hers when it opened, like happened at Sky Ranch, and they had to fill Pine Middle School. I was very surprised Monday afternoon when I looked, and the new options have added suggestions that Huffaker should be rezoned to Vaughn and Wooster. I do not understand the reasoning for the suggestion that Huffaker go to Vaughn and Wooster. Our zone is so large, and the farthest reach of our zone isn't near Vaughn and Wooster. It doesn't make sense when I consider 5 years ago, Mr. Searcy, who was in charge at that point in the zoning committee, stressed that McCarran and Virginia were natural dividing lines, not even including 395. Most of our zone is south of McCarran and west of Virginia, unlike Vaughn and Wooster. If you consider weather and fire danger, it supports our natural alignment with hers and Galena. When the school district tried to enact different zones that would have snow days and some that would not, our neighborhood proves that we should be aligned with hers and Galena. If you consider last fall with the fire days, that's even a bigger indicator that we belong in hers and Galena, because all of Galena's feeder schools were canceled for multiple days, and Huffaker. They were closed because of fire danger. Our neighborhoods were under evacuation warnings, not Wooster and Vaughn. While our neighborhoods have too much snow and it's not safe for us to get to school, that's not the same with Wooster and Vaughn if you are ever going to go down the road and try snow day zones, which would make sense. Currently, I see the 10-year projection for Marcy Hers. It's 63% utilized. While you have the need to fill Vaughn, you also have the need to utilize hers middle school. I think we fit there. I think we should be there. And I think geographically it makes more sense. The driving time chart doesn't make sense to me if I live on Mile Drive or Holcomb Ranch Lane. So I think you need to consider us for hers and Galena, please.
Thank you.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Hold on. Okay. I'm gonna make it quick. So at a recent meeting, Washington School Board voted to temporarily close Pine Middle School for the summer of 2026. So you read the RGJ opinion, look at that. So for me, I do support rezoning of a new space rate to new Vaughn Middle School and for Wooster High School. If a school board, this board decide to rezone to new Vaughn, approve new Vaughn, but remain the money, I'm okay with that until, gotta make sure the Wooster need to be rebuilt for new school till 2023, so we could rezone from Damani to Wooster, so to have more, more space, similar like Huck High School is. So yes, it will help students to attend new school. I love the new school with a new school with a better academic program and athletic program and more diverse student body. But I lean with option one, but we should bring back to option 1A, that include Donner Spring going to rezone to Vaughn and Wooster instead of DePaul Damani, because Donner Spring, Dawson, and Hidden Valley are neighbors. So they should be our neighborhood schools together. So I know it sounds hard for DePaul and Damani, and that will deplete Damani Ranch High School because they're in a high growth rate. So you never know if a price is low, or the birth rate will decline or increase, or the people will move here from our state or from Las Vegas. So concern being back to option 1A, including Donner Spring to Vaughn and Wooster. And it makes sense for Huffaker parents to rezone to Hearst and Galena. So it makes sense as a geographically Huffaker would traditionally zone for Swope and Reno. I tell you guys rezone to Pine. So if you guys rezone Huffaker to Swope and Reno, so I think Allison should rezone to Vaughn and Wooster. So consider that as an option for Allison, rezone to Vaughn and Woosters. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. I'd ask folks to try to not provide applause. I appreciate the energy, but that's what public comment is for. And so if you feel a need to express support of a specific thing, please submit a card and voice your opinion that way.
Peter Gower.
Short microphone. Members of the committee, thanks for what you do. I have to say I'm honestly frustrated as a parent. My son goes to Swope Middle School. When he was in elementary school, he was zoned for Swope. In 2020, it got changed to Pine, and now we're talking about changing it again to a completely different school. So we're in that pocket of the community that keeps shifting back and forth. It makes it really tough to have certainty in terms of our families and saying to our kids, yeah, you can look forward to going to this high school. You can look forward to going to Reno or look forward to going to Galena. Frankly, I think that option 3 should be on the table. If you look at all of to your question, Tyler, it's not a perfect feeder from the elementary school, but Swope to Reno makes a lot of sense to me. The second best option, I think, is pulling our neighborhood down. You can see the map right there. South Virginia Street is kind of a natural barrier to go down to Galena to hers. I think that's the next best option. But traditionally, our neighborhood, our pocket there at Huffaker to north to McCarran, has always been Swope to Reno. So why take that option off the table and mix everything up in the pot again? Put us right back to Swope, that's where we were before, and then keep going to Reno. You don't have to make a change to the current zoning. Thanks.
Thank you.
Larry Alves.
Solving problems. Yeah.
It's because he's a designer, so he can solve these kinds of problems. So I spoke at the last meeting. I'm going to dovetail off of, we got a lot of Huffaker families over here, so it's good to see them out. So Canon Design, thank you for designing the new Vaughn Middle School. I'm sure it's going to be amazing when it opens up next year. We talked about why it got built so big if the student population isn't here. It's kind of like Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. So now, like south of the Truckee River, there's only going to be 4 middle schools and 4 high schools, but we're only talking about 5 elementary schools. So if we're going to talk about filling up these schools to capacity, I think we should be talking about every single elementary school, right? So if you look who is closest to Vaughn, there are 3 elementary schools closer to Vaughn than Huffaker Elementary School. It doesn't make any sense to bus kids past Anderson Elementary School and past Jesse Beck Elementary School to get to Vaughn Middle School when those neighborhoods are right there. It's like, I wrote down the numbers here. Mount Rose, 1.6 miles. They're 2.5 miles from Wooster, so no buses needed, right? Hunter Lake, or Jesse Beck, 2.6 miles to Vaughn, 2.5 miles to Wooster. Anderson, 2.8 miles to Vaughn, 2.7 miles to Wooster. Huffaker, it is 4.7 miles to Vaughn, and then another 4 miles to Wooster. So how the zones are being considered and how the student bodies are being considered about the vertical matriculation, that's your word, not my word. I think if we're going to be talking about, now that Pine's off the table, right? We've established Pine's no longer going to be a middle school. Pine's off the table. We now have 4 middle schools south of Truckee feeding 4 high schools. I think we should look at every single elementary school and figure out how best to fill in with your guys' guidance right here. 7101, right? That's the Washoe County School District's guidance. And it says, number 2, the number 2 most important thing, assign students to the closest school to the extent possible. There's 3 elementary schools closer to Vaughn than Huffaker. Your guys' guidance does not make sense to move Huffaker to Vaughn and Wooster. And I'll yield the rest of my time for applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Elise Rose.
Short, so this will be real easy for me. Okay. Good. Okay, piggybacking off of the last 2 as well, and my husband. Let's talk some numbers. I realized at the last meeting that I was at, a lot of you don't actually have like breakdown of numbers. You have just total numbers of the school capacity for the elementary schools. There are 55 fifth graders at Huffaker. About 15 of them are already going to SWOPE. You guys have to realize this. These parents are basically doing it anyway, and we all know it. It's happening. So if 15 of them are already going to SWOPE via GT Magnet programs, siblings that are already there, or grandparents that live in the zone, then there's about 40 students left. Some of those kids are going to choose to go to Marcy Hurst because they live on that side of Wendy Hill, and it is easier for them, and that is fine. School of choice, that school is open, it has room. The rest of us, so now we're down to about maybe 30 students. We are talking about 30 students, roughly, going to SWOPE, where they were before, where they've always been, and down to Reno High, which in these numbers, Reno High is losing students year by year over the next 10 years. Their population is declining, regardless of where you put Huffaker. So I know that SWOPE has enough room for 30 students. You guys know that, I know that. The staff there knows that. I have talked to them about it, and they all seem to be okay with it, honestly. So as far as numbers is concerned, we're talking about roughly 30 students here, okay? So let's talk about the community. So the community, our sports, when our kids, the Huffaker zoned kids, play sports, we play sports with kids that are zoned for SWOPE and Reno High. That is our community. We are tied to those schools in those community. Baseball, soccer, swimming. My kids swim right down the street from my house. It is our community. We are tied to it already, whether our school goes there or not. So let's see here. Travel time and distance, as my husband said. we are completely ignoring the fact that there are 3 other schools that us as Huffaker parents will literally have to drive past in order to get to Vaughn every day. How does that make any sense? How does that make financial sense? How does that make sense for busing? How does it make sense for parents that are commuting? You have schools that are closer, but nobody wants to talk about them. They're not on the table, they weren't part of this study, and I think that most of us probably know why, we just don't want to say it out loud. Jesse Beck, Mount Rose, Hunter Lake, and Anderson. These are schools in more affluent neighborhoods, and we probably don't want to have the parents get a little bit irritated. But you know what? You have a whole group of parents over there that are pretty darn irritated that this is not even a choice that we're talking about. Long-term solutions here. Make sense for the closest schools to go to the closest middle schools and high schools. I know it's not a fun topic, but that is what makes financial sense for the school long-term. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chelsea Moore.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Moore. I am the PTA secretary at Huffaker Elementary School. I'm so excited to see all my Huffaker parents here. I'm also the parent of 3 students in Washoe County School District. I have a 1st grader, a 4th grader, and a 6th grader. Sorry. My 6th grader is currently a school of choice child at Marcy Hers, and I want all of my children to be on the same educational track. Zoning the Huffaker students to Hers Galena provides my family stability as well as continuity of education. It also allows us to continue with a community we have already become a part of. To reference the driving distance times, I currently live 0.3 miles from Huffaker Elementary School, and as I'm a school of choice parent at Marcy Hers, I drive to Marcy Hers twice a day, 5 days a week, and I have to tell you, it is a lot easier to get to Hers than it was for me to get here tonight. There's less residential zones, there's more driving options, street options. I get to take the freeway if necessary, I can take the back roads necessary. It's a lot smoother of a ride than it was for me to get here today. Additionally, one of the things that I really like about Marcy Hers is that its recent STEM designation from Governor Lombardo. I feel that Marcy Hers is the best option to prepare my children for the future, especially in a community where mining, gaming, and technology businesses are the leading industries and employers. Our kids are looking at technology and STEM careers in the future, and the best schools are the ones that are going to set the kids up for that. Marcy Hers being a STEM designation helps my children prepare for their future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Horvath.
Hello, my name is Amy Horvath, and I have 2 students who attend Huffaker Elementary. Before I share my thoughts on which option I'm a proponent of, I have a comment regarding the rival gang violence. I would like to ask that further study is provided about rival gangs being put together. This is a serious issue. As a parent and educator, I don't believe that providing resources to administrators and teachers is an acceptable answer. The best way to mitigate this violence is to prevent putting rival gangs together in the first place. So I hope some further research will be done on this before any decisions are made. Getting back to the zoning options, I'm a proponent of option 1. My understanding is that Huffaker was rezoned about 5 years ago, and it sounds like times before that as well. Rezoning at this time should provide stability for the Huffaker community. Our family moved to the Reno area from Truckee, and part of the reason we selected the neighborhood that we're in is because of the schools. When we purchased our home, we were under the impression that our schools would attend Huffaker, followed by Swope, and then either Reno High or Galena. We had heard rumors that Huffaker could potentially be rezoned, but this would likely mean Hers and then Galena. We purchased our home in a specific neighborhood for the associated schools. and we paid more for our home because of the schools. I also support the first public speaker's comments about the Huffaker neighborhood and community aligning more so with the Hearst-Galena community, especially in terms of the power grid and weather. While the drive time and mileage is a bit further to attend Hearst and Galena, as Chelsea Moore just pointed out, it's an easier drive coming from the neighborhoods surrounding Huffaker. I believe the students from Huffaker should attend Hearst and then Galena. Many Huffaker families are already applying for School of Choice program for Huffaker and Galena, so why not just lighten the load on School of Choice program and provide a zoned route for Huffaker families? It's my opinion that if Huffaker is rezoned for Vaughn Wooster, many families are either going to apply for School of Choice, as they already are, opt to leave the district, or look at charter and private schools instead. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Caitlin McDaniel.
Hi, I'm Caitlin McDaniel. I'm also the PTA president at Huffaker Elementary. So again, I'm also excited to see all of our families here. I am also in favor of option 1, with Huffaker going to Hearst and Galena High School. With Hearst receiving the recognition of being a STEM school, and our son, who's in 4th grade currently at Huffaker Elementary, he excels in those disciplines. It is encouraging that he would be zoned to that school. As many families have also mentioned about families choosing School of Choice out of Huffaker to go to Galena and Hearst, I think it would be beneficial if we were zoned there and lighten the burden on the School of Choice program, allowing students to go to that school automatically. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Weibel.
Hi, everybody. My name's Danielle Weibel. I'm here representing Hidden Valley. First of all, I just want to say I don't understand why us going to DePoli-Damani means Huffaker has to go to Vaughn. So like this gentleman was saying earlier, the drive time from my house in Hidden Valley, I'm on the most eastern side of the neighborhood, takes me 11 minutes to get to DePoli. God bless Veterans Parkway. It has changed the dynamic of how that whole neighborhood operates. You're talking 3 stoplights to get to that middle school. Damani, it's 15-minute drive from my house. Wooster's about a 17-minute drive. Vaughn's took me 18 minutes to get here, traffic. So the burden that the time that it takes. So I'm a proponent for the closest school, and not as the crow flies, as Google Map drives, because that's how we all get there. The enrollment in Hidden Valley is also one of the lowest in the school. Right now, our 5th grade class is 50 kids. Half of them are already using School of Choice to go to DePoli. Granted, we're zoned for Pine right now. Our 4th grade class has 34 kids. Our 3rd grade class is 33 kids. So as you were a proponent of leaving a space for the community to grow, we're a drop in the bucket. Now, I don't know if that helps to wanting to fill the schools more. We're just a small population in our little pocket. And so I'm curious, I don't know the exact numbers as to how many are already going or using the School of Choice, but for me and my family, I will be using it if it's not changed by the time my daughter's in 4th grade, my son's in 3rd. But the burden that it is causing, especially with the 215 release, it would just be a nice release to have the bus schedules. Yeah, I don't know what the impact of the busing would be with that drive time, but I know it's less than getting from Hidden Valley neighborhood to Vaughn. And I also, again, I'm also supporting of, I don't know why option 2A messes up Huffaker so bad. We just want to go to Damani and DePoli. Sorry, I vote for 2A. I know none of you back there do. But please maybe change an option to where we can go south, which is also where all of our softball programs, we use Washoe Little League.
Thank you.
Rochelle Corono.
My name is Rochelle Carano. I'm back on the Huffaker. I am a parent of a child at Huffaker, and based on your three options that I saw, I'm an advocate for option 1, which is Huffaker to Hertz and Galena. I really appreciate this committee, again, for keeping our kids together. I know they were split previously, and that's not something that we want. The discussions amongst the parents, again, like you've heard, is that many of them are already planning to use school choice, as I will, if it was going to Vaughn and Worcester. So for planning purposes, like you just talked before, if option 1 were chosen, it would be easier to anticipate the numbers that are coming into Hertz and Galena. As a side note, I am a teacher at a different school, and I know the impact it has in September and October when you count those numbers and we have to get rid of teachers and we have to switch classes and kids have to go to different rooms, and we don't want that. And so we would like to just have those numbers set and have us go right over to Hertz and Galena. Thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal Edwards.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and doing this very challenging work. I'm here with my parent hat on tonight. I am part of the Huffaker crew. However, that zone in general is a little complicated because we're split on both sides of McCarran. So some are, south of McCarran, and then there's a decent contingency kind of right inside the loop. And that kind of complicates things even more because we've kind of gone back and forth between Pine and Swope and hers and all those things. But my focus tonight is really kind of what has already been said. Our zip code's 89509. We've sort of all been together for a long time in sports, in community events, in alignment with the schools that we thought we were zoned for. And it's frustrating. And as a district employee, I know these things happen, and I know we're looking at the greater good for everybody, but the drive times are critical, and it doesn't seem to make sense to send. I totally understand the families that live on the other side of McCarran and want to go to hers and Galena, but on the inside, we're much more closely aligned to get to Swope and Reno High. I have a husband that works at Reno High. I have a student that already goes to Swope, and it's 10 minutes, give or take, depending on traffic. So it just doesn't make sense on the inside for us to go all the way to Galena. I actually used to work there as well, and on a good morning, it would be about 18 minutes. Reno High is less than 12 on most days. Swope is less than that because they're with it, well, maybe a minute more, I should say. So the community is tight, and we all want to stay together, and that's why it was split before. And so I know you guys want to keep everything aligned, and I'm not trying to overcomplicate a complicated situation, but that little pocket for Huffaker is a very unique zone. And I think the families are tight, and I think either way, you're going to see them scatter and go the direction that is best for them in that situation, regardless of the decision. And there's not a perfect solution, and we know that. But I do think that neighborhood needs to be left alone. This is the third round, and everybody's frustrated. All of our kids are so close, and they've all planned to go to school together, and now it's complete chaos in the neighborhood. So we would just ask that you consider all those things and remember that, they want to stay together, the kids. They want to compete together. They want to make plans together. They want to be able to walk to their friends or go to sleepovers and not have to drive across town because somebody lives up at the top past Galena, and that we live 25 minutes the other way. So just my 2 cents. Thank you again.
Go Husky.
Thank you.
Erica Fries.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. I don't envy your jobs ever. So I'm also a Huffaker mom. I have 2 kids that attend there, and my daughter's going to be going to middle school next year. With Pine closing, we made the choice to try and do school of choice, to not have her have to leave Pine after 1 year. We went to all of those meetings when they were talking about Pine closing, what we were going to do with Pine. And to be really honest, a Vaughn Wooster track was never mentioned, never thought of. It wasn't brought up in the last meeting. And so that was, I think, really frustrating for me to see that on the table for 2 of your 3 preferred options. I think you've heard it from several parents tonight. We're a pretty small school, 55 kids right now with, if you look at the projections, all the numbers are dropping. That's not a lot of kids, right? And most of us are going to pick school choice, or we're going to figure out how to get our kids somewhere else, or we're going to choose a private option. So I kind of sit in the middle. I live on the north of McCarran side. I'm fine for my child to go in either direction. I'm a full-time working mom, and so a bus option is kind of critical for me. To walk out of my work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon 5 days a week isn't really an option. But luckily, I have a great community that I know will all lean on each other for whichever decision is made. I think the other thing is, we moved into town several years ago. We lived way out north. And when we bought our home in Southwest Reno, we purposely did that for the schools that we were zoned for. So to have a pretty big change in where we're going is really frustrating. I don't want to sell my house and move 3 blocks over just so that I can go to the school that I was already zoned for. And then to top that off, all of our kids play sports together, and to try and split those and put them, in a school with kids that they've never played with, we all play the other direction. So I just want you guys to consider that when you're thinking about rezoning options. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim McCartan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for what you guys are doing. I know how hard this job is. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up. One of them is the capacity question that you were talking about earlier. With the addition that we added on to Damani Ranch about 7 years ago now, that school is built to hold 2,200 students. So talking about making sure we have room and space at that school, all the options that are on the table, the largest number puts us, I believe, at 1,600. There's plenty of room to do that. The other piece I wanted you guys to take into consideration, it's been probably 15 years ago now, where we all put in proposals to have signature academies at every school, and as was brought up earlier, Damani Ranch is the performing arts center for our district. If you choose option 1 or 1A, that will effectively destroy our performing arts program. If we lose 300 students compared to where we are right now, that's 10 allocations. As the curriculum assistant principal, I'm the one who builds that master schedule. I can tell you right now, I would have to cut in our performing arts center, which means we would lose one of our programs. So I've got to choose, do I lose dance? Do I lose choir? Do I lose band? Do I lose orchestra? Do I lose theater? If I do that pretty much destroys what we do with our musical every year, and the things that those teachers are doing wouldn't be the same anymore. So just wanted you guys to have those 2 things to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie Jameson.
Hi, I'm Katie Jameson, for the record. Thank you, committee. I know these decisions are not easy and complicated, and I was here years ago for the first rezone. I'm a Huffaker mom. I've been there 10 years. By the time we leave, we'll have been there 12. So we've seen this a few times. I just wanted to give you some perspective from a family who's been kind of thrown around in the zoning and what our family looks like in the moment. So I have 3 students, and I have one at Huffaker who's in 3rd grade. I have one at HERS on School of Choice who's in 7th grade, and I have one in the zone who's going to Reno High and is also participating in the Red House project there. We're all kind of mixed up, as you can see. I have 2 children that are, gearing up for high school. We made the decision to School of Choice our middle child, knowing that another rezone was coming. Our distance-wise, we're very far in the pocket of the zoning. We're on the other side of Huffaker, probably proximity, we're closer to hers. We did that in hopes that we wouldn't get caught up in another rezone. And here we are, but we tried to do the best we can for our family. But I just wanted to express what it kind of looks like when you have students hoping and striving for certainty. Some of the other things that parents said, not having that certainty and changing often is difficult. I do think having 2 options to go Vaughn, Worcester was kind of shocking for a bunch of us to see that on there as we drive past other closer schools, way outside of our bubble, if you will, that we've already tried to maintain for many years and have that community and try to keep our kids with their community so they're stronger and have some support as they're moving through different schools. So I wanted to point that out. So I'm not a fan of Vaughn Worcester. I think it adds a lot more complications to us getting there for us personally, as far as we are in the zone being the very end of the boundary. It would be a lot farther for us. And so I don't favor those decisions. But I did want to also just speak that I really appreciate School of Choice as a parent, and that has provided us some options through these hard times. We are a really complicated zone, and so I do think looking more thorough at closer schools and more broadly is something we shouldn't take off the table, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Worrell?
Hi. I wasn't planning on speaking, but just a couple things to piggyback on the other parents. I'm a Huffaker parent. I too have a child that's going to go to middle school next year, and I went to every single one of the Pine Middle School capital improvement project meetings. Again, not once was Vaughn offered as an option. So throughout the process before doing the School of Choice, I called the school district School of Choice office. They said I didn't know what I was talking about, that Pine was going to get shut down. They said, call Pine. I called Pine. They said, Pine's not getting shut down. Try calling Huffaker. I left a message for the dean at Pine. No one called me back. I called my own school at Huffaker. The principal wouldn't even call me back. The reason why this is important is because I was trying to make an educated guess based on the information that the district gave to me in every single meeting to anticipate where my child was going to be rezoned. So she didn't do Pine for 1 year, get disrupted again, and then have to go to another school. We all moved to the neighborhood for Swope and Reno. We've been told that's not an option. At that capacity, it's full. So my best guess, based on the information over the last year or two, has been to go to HERS. We are now enrolled next year for HERS. I'm really not happy with the misinformation and the feeling like Huffaker is an afterthought for zoning. Again, as we've said multiple times, it's a little pocket and a little community, but it repeatedly feels like it's forgotten and it's knocked aside. So I'm really asking that this information is clear and well thought out, because it impacts students in August. This is a big deal for a lot of families. So please work on clarifying the information. This Vaughn stuff is totally news to us. I have other thoughts, but I don't have the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no more in-person comments for 2.05.
Very good, and thank you for the folks that submitted digital comments. We have read those and received those. I just want to say thank you too for the public's engagement. This process is easier when you participate and give us feedback. So it's not a small investment of your time. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you. At this point, I think it's going to be helpful for the committee to have a bit of a discussion ourselves about the information we've heard tonight. And I think that the objective should be, since we are not taking action tonight, that we give some sort of clear direction back to district staff so that the next time we meet in April, that they can provide us updated option based on our view. So I think it'd be good to just share thoughts or concerns about what's been presented clearly so we can just understand where folks' minds are at. So with that, would anyone like to sort of open up the discussion?
Yeah, this is Polly Boardman. There's a few things that that are going through my mind. So first, in our old maps, we used to have numbers of how many from each community, and that might be helpful, like when people are bringing up how many people are at each school, you know, kind of seeing where the pockets are. I know that we took option 2 off the, wait, too many options. Option 2 off the table because it underutilizes Vaughn, but that's Donner Springs and Hidden Valley to go to Damani. So I'd be curious how many students, I mean, I would have done the math, but how many students with Donner Springs going to Vaughn and Hidden Valley going down to Damani, because I am concerned about what Tim is saying regarding that program getting depleted too. So, I mean, we're kind of in a pickle overall, but the other one, 1B, I feel like because you have a school, let's see, Vaughn is then at 93%, and I know that sometimes that starts to get sticky, like when we have that many in that one school. So I kind of feel like maybe that option isn't one that we're, you know, really crazy about, but I was just trying to narrow them down just to kind of see, because a lot of these numbers, you're just moving eggs on a page, but I think it's really interesting to hear what everybody's saying. So just my thoughts.
Ryan Anderson for the record. I was hoping maybe we could get some of the numbers on the SWOPE. It was on here as an option, and I know it's saying that it's uncomfortably SWOPE enrollment, but I don't have any numbers to like look at that. So I don't know if in the future we can get those numbers.
Brett Rodella for the record. What numbers precisely?
Well,
Sorry.
So we have, you know, numbers for enrollment, future, and whatnot. There's nothing for SWOPE, but SWOPE at one point looked like it was an option as option 3. From public from public comment, it feels like option 1 and option 3 are probably the 2 most popular from them, but I don't have any numbers about SWOPE enrollment. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong.
So do you want to see SWOPE with the other options? Is that what you're articulating?
All right. Never mind. I've just been shown.
Okay.
Let me
I
check
think
that.
there are some SWOPE numbers in the appendix.
Okay. I'll look at those then.
The other options.
I think Kristen DeHaan for the record, hearing that people would have to pass several elementary schools. I did that with my kids back in Spanish Springs when they were in elementary school, and it is frustrating. And I don't remember that we have looked at anything where any of those schools would be going that way. So if we could maybe look at that.
Yeah, Brett Rodella for the record. Can I provide a little bit of discussion on that? Something I noticed, you know, for one, these options unfolded kind of linearly, okay? And the reason Huffaker is on, you know, Huffaker doesn't have a middle school come 26, 27. So that's that. When it comes to disrupting other areas, this doesn't come into play until it's voiced from the public. A little more to say is, what case are you going to make to Anderson, Beck, or Mount Rose if they're zoned to Vaughn, and if you put Huffaker into SWOPE? I'm not trying to debate anyone here. I'm just trying to lay out some perspective for my sake, the sake of the public, and the committee. We can look at options, sending some of these schools to Vaughn. That'll come from the committee's direction to us, and we can continue looking at Huffaker to hers. But within the context of trying to get Huffaker into Swope and making a case that these other schools belong to Vaughn, there's not a strong argument there from my perspective right now.
Tyler Rogers for the record. I mean, I think if I think about how we've tried to make decisions consistently over time, I think really important distinctions are natural barriers or major thoroughfares. And I think, to me, that's an important distinction in these options and something we've used pretty consistently, either a major road, highway, and in these views, like I used to call it 395, what is it now, 580, is like a clear dividing line of the city. And in these lines. And so to me, that's just an important element to factor in. And I think it is important that we use consistent factors as we're making these decisions. So I just wanted to voice that I think that's important to be consistent.
Darren Fleck for the record. I think we're running up against two issues. One is something we can't do anything about is we have the district planners telling us there's not as many children, but yet we're building, 20 years ago we built middle schools about 1,000 kids, and now we're building middle schools for 1,200 and 1,300 kids when our population is going down. And that's not our fault. That's on the board and their decision. I'm a huge believer in public education as a public school teacher and in how, for example, the Old Pine brought our community together, both either side of McCarran Boulevard, and it was a prime example of what our community could be. I think Damani Ranch does a great job of that. Reno High does a great job of that. So many of our schools, and it's getting tougher as our community grows, obviously. But in reality, we're in a position where we have parents who want to stay in public education, support public education, and I think we should put them where they want to go. And we know that most of our most vocal parents want to go to either DePauli, HERS, Swope in this situation, and the district put a huge building, beautiful building, in a part of the community that they, in their own numbers, are showing us are going to be down to 60% no matter what we do in the next 5 years. Now, if that means that maybe this beautiful building they're building gets to become that new greenhouse that never got built, which also needs to be taken into consideration, then maybe we should think outside the box and put the families where they want to go and send them to HERS, Swope, and DePauli and fill up these ginormous schools that we built, and that's a horrible word I just chose, these big schools that we built, and put the people where they want to be, and make that our recommendation, and let the school board who helped create this problem figure out what an underutilized Vaughn should be. Because if we still do have rooms and these projections do hold out, even though we have all that dirt down into Double Diamond and everything, if those projections do hold out, then this school will be so small here in Vaughn, we can find a place for these kids, and we'll have another example of Pine Middle School in its heyday when we had a diverse group of kids from every walk of life making a school successful. Just my 2 cents. Thanks.
I think that's helpful. And do you? Okay.
Okay, so just a reminder, this is a discussion and presentation only item. This is not a deliberation item. We're getting dangerously close to deliberation. Deliberation is defined as a discussion towards action. If you want to ask questions or make suggestions to staff on things you'd like to see, okay, but I really want to encourage you to be very careful and very cautious about your words. If, for example, if we were to build on the last statement, that would be deliberations, and I am going to have to interrupt you because we're getting dangerously close to an open meeting law violation.
Would it be all right to try to refine that into an option?
I don't really think it is. You don't really have the authority to direct staff. This is not an action item. If you want to direct staff, we should have put this on as an action item, but unfortunately, we're limited by NRS 241, which is the open meeting law. So I would just be very careful what we say next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other comments from the committee?
Can I clarify then, Darren Fleck? Then my opinion on this would be to take Huffaker, the current options, if that helps, to take Huffaker, Hidden Valley, and send them to the southern schools. And that would be something that I think would make the community happy and also help with some of the numbers that we see in some of our not so recently built schools, but the newer schools that we have.
Cami LeRae for the record. I think that having kids go to public school and having those dollars stay within the budget, quite frankly, is something that is important to consider. I am not quite sure from a data perspective where the insight would come from as far as like what we would ask of staff on this one. But I do believe that there is some correlation in between economic status and school choice, and of course, private schools. I think it is of value to recognize that with regards to keeping kids within the school district. I would like to see some kind of data to help us with that, if there is any data to help us with that. Yeah, so it's a little esoteric, and it definitely has some economic strata that goes to it. And I want to make sure that with the Damani Ranch programs, the Damani Ranch High School programs, whatever, I think that there's that disconnect for me at least to understand how these decisions and where those thresholds are with regards to the budgets and what these decisions do to the extracurricular programs in some of these schools, because I think it's also important taking the economic, and really make it an equitable kind of decision to where we're not taking programs away from schools. I think that's actually a paramount importance. So I don't know exactly how the data comes to us in order to make sure that we're not doing that kind of harm, but I know it's outside of what we're seeing right now. That's all.
Melissa Cook for the record. I am wondering, we had briefly discussed at the last meeting an option that was just Hidden Valley to DePoli and Damani, and I don't see that option here. So I would like to see, I don't know if we would call it an option 5 at this point and a 5A, but I would like to see what an option would look like that was Smith Ridge, Dotson, and Donner Springs going into Vaughn and Wooster, Hidden Valley going to DePoli, Damani, and then with the Huffaker, I'd like to actually see 2 different options, one with that neighborhood, because it is a very weird pocket, one option of them going to Swope and Reno, and another one of them going to the Hearst Galena. I think something to consider, like many of the families said, those that are closer to Reno High are going to do the school of choice to go to Reno High, and I think those that are closer to the Hearst Galena are going to make that school choice to go to Hearst Galena. We do know that Hearst Galena is going, or hers at least, it has the room. So I think regardless of what we do with Huffaker and also regardless of what we do with Hidden Valley, they're still going to make the choices that they're going to make that are best for their children. But it would be nice to see what those options look like. So it would be like an option 5, A and option 5B, I guess, one with just Huffaker going one direction or the other, Hidden Valley going south, and then the other 3 schools going Vaughn Worcester. And I just wanted to piggyback off of something that she said was, as a product of this district, I was a student who drove right past Dilworth Middle School, where I now work, every single day to go to Sparks Middle School. I'm 43 years old, and that's still an issue for me. Like, why did I drive past another middle school to go to a middle school that was much further from my house? So I think that is important for us to consider. I think we also, signature academies, I have a high schooler, signature academies are important. And I would hate to deplete something that means a lot and keeps a lot of kids in school. I have students from my school that are attending Damani that almost dropped out. And because of my team's hard work, we got her to stay in school, and she's going to that signature academy because it's something that she absolutely loves, and they've been able to wrap their arms around her. So that is the only thing that's keeping her in school. So I think I would hate to deplete Damani as well. So I just said a whole lot, but I'd like to see some other options.
Okay, I didn't express myself very well last time. So if you agree with something that has been said, I do not want you voicing your agreement with it. Just sit silently, because that's how deliberation starts. I see staff is taking notes on every single suggestion that's been made, and I would imagine staff will honor those requests to the best of their abilities. What we have to avoid is building a consensus with this committee, and that you basically all decided that you want option 5A that was just created. That would be an action, and that's what I'm really concerned about right now. It's not fair to those parents who didn't show up tonight, because they might have looked at the agenda and said, this is just for discussion and presentation. They're not taking action tonight, right? So we're disenfranchising those who may not have shown. So if you have something to add, then please add it to staff, but do not enter into a discussion amongst yourselves. And if you are okay with the suggestions that's made, do not say, oh, I like that, let's do that. Do you see how that's a step towards taking action? Does everyone understand? Okay.
Polly Boardman. Melissa, were you suggesting going back to a split feeder for Huffaker, which is what we went away from in 2020?
I could be in support of that, or I would like to see the numbers if we went one direction, what that means for, let's say, HERS, Galena. If we went the other direction, then what does that mean for Swope, Reno? So I think having either one of those options, or we could look at a split again, but I know that that's something they are not in favor of, so I'm just wondering what it would look like one direction versus the other to help us from a data-informed place for school numbers.
I think I'm curious to see numbers that, because of the impacts on Huffaker that we've heard, and a preference around that community is different. Trying to explore what the options would look like of drawing the line around, I guess, McCarran, with the northern part of that continuing or sort of feeding into Swope and Reno, but the south staying with sort of what's in option 1, which is moving into HERS and Galena, just to understand those numbers. It's a split of the, it's not a split feeder, it is just where the lines would switch.
Polly Boardman, Tyler, that would be a split
Yeah,
feeder.
sorry, you're right. Yeah, so yes, we would be splitting, yes, sorry. Correct. But that, we've heard that preference in the community, so I'd like to just see the numbers.
Adriana Publico for the record. I'm wondering if staff knows if Hidden Valley is zoned away from Vaughn Wooster, can the students in the deaf and hard of hearing program still access transportation through special education?
Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer for the record. Yes, they would be able, because they are special programs, they would be able to get transportation.
I mean to Vaughn and Wooster.
Yes.
They can
to
stay in the
Vaughn,
program.
they can stay in the program,
Okay,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Tyler Rogers for the record again. I think because we've heard the impact of special programs and it's been a consistent thing, as well as we've heard from staff that that's an important part of the logic for the size of Vaughn, understanding the impact of special programs across the schools impacted. We've heard from DeMonte Ranch might lose a theater program based on this stuff. So like trying to quantify and understand those electives or impacts with the enrollment numbers that are here would be helpful, a useful data point. We've had that in other zoning decisions.
We can bring back those options to, so you can see signature academies don't get transportation, right? So there are some programs, special education programs that do, and other programs that don't. So we can bring back to you a list of what does and what doesn't, so it's really clear, so you can make a decision based off of that information.
Not just about transportation, but like.
And what's at each school.
Yeah, having the option for electives. Okay, thank you. Other feedback, or just sort of comments from the committee?
I was just wondering on the DeMonte stuff, if we can get the thresholds of what would start losing programs, like what those numbers would be and what that would look like. Just so as we're kind of making that decision, it's like, ooh, that'll drop us below the threshold, we're gonna lose programs. Thank you.
Tammy Zimmerman for the record. We can bring back that was a discussion about thresholds and that before and their electives that we talked about that we could bring to you guys.
Melissa Cook for the record. One of the public comments that we got from Mr. Darville, Mr. Bell, he brings up a good point, so I'm just kind of wondering how many, we're talking about the Pine-Vaughn situation, but is this going to lead to additional, like, rezonings of elementaries and then high schools, and that maybe that's something that this committee needs to think long-term, as it was brought up earlier, and we've brought up in other zoning meetings. You know, there's gonna be a little bit of a snowball effect here, and as we go through different facility modernization, but is this particular decision gonna want us to then look at elementary schools like what's already been brought up, as well as maybe some of our high schools that are south? And looking back at his email, that's a concern.
This is helpful feedback. Anything else that we want to voice for staff to hear so that we can have that at our next meeting for action? I think the only thing that I would like to add is safety was brought up. And I think it is not the purview of this committee to make safety decisions for the district, but I think it's an important element for us to factor in. And so I think it would be helpful for staff to surface some information and be responsive on that. Okay, yes, yeah.
Sorry, one more thing to just timeline-wise. When is our next meeting?
Yeah, it's on the agenda. So we're going to miss March, but it'll be in April because we've got spring break.
So when it comes to school of choice, if the window opens on March 3rd and closes March 14th, then this decision will be made, or possible decision would be made after. So families that have students going to middle school next year, that is a problem, potentially.
We can remind us of the timing impact in terms of when this decision would go in?
So this decision for Vaughn specifically would go into the school year of 26, 27, right? So it does give them a year, but if their students start, right, that's what you're kind of talking about, is if they start and then it's changed after that. The school of choice option is out there, right, and should be prioritized where those students would want to go. And they should put in applications for that at this time.
Does anyone feel strongly about meeting before that? Because we can't, I mean, we could meet in a few weeks. I don't know if that's actually possible now it's on the agenda. Is that an option if we decide that? The plan was that we would normally meet during spring break. Okay.
That's, if that's a direction you guys are asking to go, we can work towards that and work with you and the vice chair to schedule that meeting.
Is there, I guess I can't really take action.
Let's not do that right here.
Yeah.
That'll be between,
We'll
yeah.
do it later.
Okay. Pushing the bounds. All right, so any other discussion items on this item before we close it out? Okay, very good. We will close out this agenda item. Thank you for the participation. That brings us to agenda item 3.01, general public comment. Do we have any agenda public comment on that one?
Pablo Nava Duran.
All right, so if you want to go to, so here's a different option for you guys. So that bachelor for you, Darren Frack. So you want to keep Hidden Valley, Dawson, Donaldsonville to go to DePaul and Damani to keep the
Hey,
program.
Pablo, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're going to just sort of we'll restart the time here, but I just want to be clear to the community members that are here about the announcement of the next meeting. If we do shift the date,
It's a possibility that the
yeah,
date will shift.
we want you to know that it's a possibility based on what's been discussed. So please monitor the school website for if a meeting is scheduled to be posted publicly there. Look for the information, but I just want to flag that so that we can get your participation. Thank you. Sorry, Pablo, to interrupt. We want to make sure we got that.
All right, so if, as I say, if we want to keep us on zones, Hidden Valley, Dawson, and Donaldsonville, rezone to DePaul and Damani, so they don't lose the signature program or lose allocation. And then Huffaker to Hearst and Galena. And then rezone Smith Ridge to Von Wooster. I know it will have negative consequence in short term for the game rival, but I'm going to recommend for the board of trustee because we have a school board policy, the school closer. We can send a terminate to the school board, like for example, Trainer Middle School. Like we should recommend rezone all Trainer Middle School to Vaughn Middle School to fill up that gap. And then close to Trainer Middle School in early 2026. And we also recommend if we decide to rebuild Wooster, we should make Wooster and Spark High School combine, and we should close Spark High School. So that's a recommend. And also, Spark and Delaware should be combined. So have a nice day.
Thank you, Pablo. Any other general public comment?
No other in-person public comments.
Very good. That brings us to agenda item 3.02. It's the announcement of the next meeting, currently scheduled for April 17th, but we will meet with staff to decide if we want to move that up. And that brings us to 3.03. Adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for the participation.